Welcome to In the Spread. My name is William Toney, and I am here today with good friend Mark Nichols again. And today we're here to talk about speckled trout, which, you know, we're here over on the Indian River, which I think it is the world's record holder.
World record
of
Pierce. Yeah.
Of a speck trout. I think it was 17.7. Yeah. You know, and you know, I came over and fished over here with you for a while, and I know in our area on the West Coast, a big trout's 22, 24 inches. You know, sometimes they'll get a little bigger. I don't even think it raises an eyebrow, or used to, on the Indian River.
Right.
Back in the day.
We had, you know, I was born and raised in Texas, and trout was the holy grail in Texas, and my dad owned a shrimp boat in Texas in Galveston Bay. And so I was raised, you know, I helped pull the shrimp net and run crab traps. And our main fish we fished for was speckled trout. We did redfish, but redfish were secondary compared to speckled trout. And at the time, you know, when I was a child, you know, we were popping corks and live shrimp.
Yep.
You know, and then in my evolution of fishing, I moved to Austin, and I had a buddy of mine working at a freshwater shop, and I started fishing plastic. And we took some worms down to Corpus where my dad had moved to, and we caught redfish on those worms. And we started going, wait a minute, you know, these fish are dumber than we realize they are. And so we started using worms, and then I was taught to carve by a painter that I knew, and I carved a shrimp, and next thing you know, I made some shrimp, and then I made something else and something else. But I made my shrimp primarily for speckled trout. And a large part of my evolution of fishing was I lived in Durango, Colorado, and you could, you know, go up to a freshwater stream and you'd see a trout laying behind that rock. And you'd drop that fly, if it was floating, it'd flow over, and he'd go up and eat it, and he'd go back down into that eddy behind that rock. And so that was just that bait sweeping. And so then I moved to Stuart, Florida. I go up to some lights at docks at night, and the trout are not trout anymore, they're snook. And they're all snook, and they're all looking in that current exactly the way that trout did. And so I said, well, I'm going to work on a shrimp that'll have a very slow drop so I can sweep it in that current, so that it'll just sweep to those fish. And so I utilized that current to sweep, and we did a ton of wading here. And it was perfect for wading because you could get out, get on top of a spoil bar on some channel, and that tide would sweep around, and it would be fast enough where you could just gain your line enough to keep it tight, and that bait would just have a very natural sweep without really having to work it so much. It's just let the current do what it's supposed to do. And we caught trout that way, and we caught snook under lights that way very well. We didn't work that bait to death. We let that tide sweep it. Sometimes when you come right up to that snook, you slowly start to crank it away, to have them swimming away from it, and that'll get them lit up. But hard jerking doesn't seem to work as well in those lights. It's more of a steady type of retrieve. Working with currents, I'll let it sweep steady. If I'm drifting in a boat, then I'll tend to work it more. We also make as opposed to the quarter ounce, we make a half ounce, which gives you a much better casting distance, and it's got about the same drop rate as the quarter ounce does. So I can use either one, but typically my favorite's a quarter ounce. I like using if I'm fishing open water. William and I were talking